I doubt there are many people on Earth who haven't heard of Walmart. They call it the everything store, a place where you can buy a gallon of milk, a hunting rifle, and a flat-screen TV all in the same trip. But behind the bright blue signs and discount price tags, there's something rotten. I know, because I used to work the night shift there. In Bentonville, Arkansas, the birthplace of the Walmart empire. But this wasn't just any Walmart. This was the Walmart. The first one, the flagship store, which hadn't truly closed its doors since it opened in 1962. The whole building felt like a monument to itself, vast, outdated, and almost alive. The fluorescent lights overhead hummed like a swarm of agitated bees, and the aisles seemed to stretch on forever, always packed with merchandise, but never truly clean. Everything felt off, like a machine running too smoothly, unnaturally so. I never thought I'd end up as a night stalker at Walmart. I mean, who dreams of scanning barcodes in front of a wall of canned soup? But when you're 24, drowning in student loans, and about to flunk out of your third major, any job becomes a for-now job. I was living in a crappy rental where the wallpaper was peeling and the landlord hadn't fixed the heat in months. So when I saw the hiring sign, I didn't think twice. How bad could it be? Just moving boxes and stocking shelves. The guy who interviewed me was named Gary. He had a numb, vacant look on his face. He barely asked any questions, just looked me up and down like he was picking out a cut of meat. "You're hired. Start Monday," he said, in a tone that felt more like a sentence than a welcome. Maybe that should have been my first sign that something was wrong. But I had no idea I was about to step into a place of rules, of secrets, of a truth big enough to swallow me whole. That night, I arrived right at 10 o'clock. The parking lot was nearly empty, save for a few cars and a semi-truck that was being unloaded. The Bentonville Walmart stood like a massive beast under the dim, yellow lights, its automatic doors glowing faintly like the maw of a monster, waiting to devour its late-night sacrifice. Gary was standing by the entrance, a clipboard in one hand and a styrofoam coffee cup in the other. He nodded at me, but it wasn't a welcome. It was more like a warning. "You're late," he said, even though I wasn't. "Clock in and get to work. Breaks at midnight. Don't slack off." He handed me a bright yellow vest, his voice as rough as sandpaper. I took the vest, and he turned and walked away without so much as a good look. I followed the signs through the aisles, which seemed to grow longer and colder in the dead of night. The merchandise sat silently, as if it were watching me. The stockroom was a chaotic mess of cardboard walls and a forklift parked crookedly in the corner. I could hear the faint sound of machinery from somewhere in the back. A few other night shifters were already moving and scanning items, their faces blank as if they were sleepwalking. That's when I saw it. A different kind of scanner. It was sitting alone on its charging cradle, the screen flickering with a faint static. The indicator light on top was blinking erratically between red and blue, like a heart attack in rhythm form. I stared at it for a few seconds, feeling a strange pull, as if it were whispering to me, calling me to pick it up. "Jack!" Gary's voice barked from behind me, snapping me out of my trance. "You're on aisle 7 tonight. Grab a scanner and get moving." I hesitated, then picked up the faulty-looking scanner. The moment I touched it, the static vanished, and the screen switched to the normal inventory interface. But it felt heavier than I remembered, like some kind of burden. I shook my head, trying to dismiss the strange feeling, and headed for aisle 7. Aisle 7 was like a forgotten graveyard. Clearance DVDs, dusty generic brand cereals, and out-of-season decorations were crammed randomly onto the shelves, a corner of forgotten things nobody wanted to touch. I started unpacking the first box, a shipment of canned soup. I kept my head down and worked, pointing the scanner at each can. Beep, beep, beep. The sounds echoed in the empty aisle. A few minutes later, the scanner's tone changed. It was no longer a crisp, short beep, but a slow, rhythmic pulse like it was tapping out a beat. I frowned and looked at the screen. A line of text had appeared. Rule 1. Do not scan the same item more than 3 times in a row. I froze. What was this? A prank? A system glitch? I looked around, half expecting to see a coworker hiding behind a shelf, trying to spook me. But the aisle was empty. There was only the low hum of the lights overhead. Okay, I muttered, setting the scanner aside and rubbing my eyes. I told myself I was just tired, but when I picked it up again, the message was gone. The screen was back to the normal inventory list. I let out a dry laugh and went back to work, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. By midnight, the whole store had fallen into a strange rhythm. The aisles were terrifyingly quiet, broken only by the occasional sound of a box being moved or the low hum of a conveyor belt in the back. The fluorescent lights would flicker sometimes, and their buzzing sounded like whispers seeping into my brain. In that moment, I had a bizarre thought. This Walmart was alive, and it was breathing. I had started my night in aisle 7, mechanically scanning can after can of soup. The scanner beeped in a steady rhythm. Beep, beep, and I gradually fell into that boring, numb state of mind, trying to ignore the growing unease in my gut. But just as I was getting used to the monotony, the scanner let out a long, piercing beep that sounded like an alarm. My hand froze. I looked down at the device. The screen went black, flickered a few times, and then a line of text appeared. Rule 1. Do not scan the same item more than 3 times in a row. I blinked, staring at the words in confusion. The font looked rushed, jagged, like it had been typed in a hurry. At first, I thought it was just a minor system error. Walmart's equipment was notoriously old. But the text didn't disappear. It just stayed there, glowing stubbornly. It wasn't supposed to be there. What the hell? I muttered, glancing around. The aisle was empty. Only the neat rows of cans watched me like silent witnesses. I put the scanner down and rubbed my temples. You're just tired, Jack. It's a glitch. I picked the scanner back up. The strange message was gone, replaced by the standard inventory screen. I let out a soft breath and kept working, though my fingers were still trembling slightly. But it wasn't over. I was only halfway through the next box of soup cans when the scanner shrieked again, its screen flashing a brilliant red. Warning: do not scan the same item more than 3 times in a row. My stomach tightened. I froze. Had I scanned something 3 times? I couldn't remember. I looked down at the cans in my cart, my heart hammering against my ribs. They're just soup cans, right? Suddenly, I felt an icy chill on the back of my neck, like a pair of eyes were locked onto me. I slowly turned, my gaze sweeping the entire aisle. Still empty. But the air had changed. It felt thick, heavy, like a faint electrical current was crawling over my skin. This is so messed up, I grumbled, shoving the scanner back into its holster on my belt and pushing the cart forward. But the scanner went off again. This time, the screen didn't show a warning. It showed a strange string of characters. 78-2D39. What the hell is this? I whispered, my palms sweating, my breath coming in short gasps. I tried pressing all the buttons to reset the screen, but no matter what I did, the string of digits just kept flashing like a countdown. I jerked my head around, my heart pounding, expecting to see something standing at the end of the aisle. But it was empty. Just then, the PA system crackled with static, and Gary's raspy voice squeezed through. Jack, get back to work. No slacking. I swallowed hard, gripping the scanner tightly. Yeah, boss, I said, even though I knew he couldn't hear me. When I turned back to the shelf, the screen flickered again. This time it read, Rule 2. If the scanner makes a sound without scanning an item, stop immediately and look behind you. My heart clenched. The scanner fell silent, but the silence was more deafening than the noise. It felt like it was pressing on my eardrums, amplifying every tiny sound to a terrifying degree. I hesitantly turned around. The aisle was still empty, but in the convex security mirror far down the hall, I thought I saw something move. That night, I learned more rules. They didn't appear all at once, but were released by the scanner at random moments, with sharp beeps and flashing screens. Rule 1. Do not scan the same item more than 3 times in a row. Rule 2. If the scanner makes a sound without scanning an item, immediately look behind you. Rule 3. Never leave your cart unattended in aisle 12. If you do, return to the back room immediately. Rule 4. If the screen displays return after scanning an item, put it back in its exact original spot. Rule 5. If the screen displays your name, clock out immediately. Do not finish your shift. By 1 a.m., My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the scanner. Each rule was like a piece of a puzzle, forming a picture I didn't want to see. I didn't know what any of it meant, but I understood one cruel fact. This job wasn't just a job. I was in aisle 12 now, the shelves lined with canned goods and condiments. I casually picked up a jar of pickles and scanned it normally, but the screen suddenly flashed with large, red letters. Return. My heart stopped. Rule 4 flashed in my mind. If it says return, you have to put it back. I looked down at the jar of pickles. It was just an ordinary jar, the kind you'd see in any grocery store, but it felt suffocatingly heavy. I turned to the shelf, tried to remember which row, which exact spot I had taken it from. Was it the top shelf? The middle? I carefully tried to place it back, then hesitated, picked it up again, and tried another spot. Beep. Wrong location. I flinched as the scanner coolly delivered its verdict. I muttered a curse under my breath and scanned it again. The message was still there. Return. Clenching my jaw, I shoved the jar back into the spot I remembered and quickly backed away. This time, the scanner finally went silent. But the silence was more unnerving than any warning. It felt like a gaze, a calm observation coming from the gaps between the shelves, as if the entire store was waiting for me to make my next mistake. I stood at the end of aisle 12, staring at the jar of pickles I had just put back on the shelf. Everything was dead quiet, except for the low-frequency hum of the lights overhead. I was about to turn and push my cart away when something in my peripheral vision caught my attention. The convex security mirror at the end of the aisle. I'd walked past it several times tonight without a second glance, but now it seemed to have come alive. I squinted, looking closely at the reflection. The shelves were stretched and distorted in the mirror, rows of products neatly arranged. My cart was in a frame, too, but in the wrong place. It was supposed to be a few feet behind me, but in the mirror, it was closer to the pickle jar, too close, as if something had pulled it. I whipped around, expecting to see that my cart had rolled on its own, but it was still in the same spot, motionless, its wheels firmly planted on the scuffed linoleum. I slowly turned back to the mirror, my heart feeling like it was being squeezed in someone's fist. This time I saw something else. A figure. At the end of the aisle, in the gap between the shelves, stood a tall, humanoid shape. Its silhouette was blurry, just a long, thin shadow. It wasn't moving, but it wasn't still either. It was watching me. I held my breath, staring at the mirror. The shadow didn't approach, didn't wave, didn't make a sound. It just stood there like a hound waiting for a command. I spun around, my heart pounding, but the aisle was empty. No shadow, no footsteps, just products and light, terrifyingly quiet. When I looked back at the mirror, the figure was gone. Damn it, I cursed under my breath, grabbed my cart, and pushed it as fast as I could toward the employee break room. My legs felt like lead. My hands were clamped to the cart's handle, and my whole body was trembling. I didn't care about the rules anymore. I just wanted to know what the hell was going on. The break room was colder than usual, bone-chillingly so. The vending machine in the corner was still humming, its fluorescent screen casting a ghostly blue light on the gray walls. I collapsed into a plastic chair, my knees weak, cold sweat trickling down my neck. Mike was sitting across from me, cupping a styrofoam coffee cup. His eyes were dark and his face was pale. He frowned when he saw me. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said, his voice like a warped cassette tape. "I think I might have," I said with a dry laugh, and told him everything, the scanner, the rules, the pickles, and the shadow in the mirror. He listened intently, his expression growing darker and darker. When I finished, he just said in a low voice, "You're in it now." "In what? Were you hiding from me?" I demanded, leaning forward. Mike's eyes darted to the break room door, as if he expected someone to burst in at any moment. He lowered his voice. "This place isn't right, Jack. You know this is the first Walmart, right? Corporate uses it as a testing ground for new systems, new equipment, and other things the outside world doesn't know about. You're saying these rules, this scanner, it's some kind of test?" My voice trembled. "The rules aren't just for us," he said, swallowing hard. "They're for the store itself. They're meant to restrain it. When you break a rule, the system starts to glitch. And when the system breaks down, it wakes up. What is it?" Mike stared at me, his voice low. "You don't want to know. Listen, no matter how scared you get, remember one thing. follow the rules. No matter how absurd they seem, you can't defy them. I didn't go back to aisle 12. To be honest, I didn't want to go near any aisle ever again. I stalled in the break room, drinking a disgusting soda from the vending machine, trying to convince myself Mike was just messing with me. But when Gary's voice came over the PA system again, ordering us to finish stocking by 3 a.m., I knew I couldn't hide all night. I dragged my cart over to the cleaning supplies section, hoping it would be quieter there. At first, nothing happened. I scanned a few bottles of bleach, a few canisters of floor cleaner. Each beep felt like it was rebuilding my confidence. But the tight knot in my stomach never really loosened. Then it happened. The sound was normal at first, but when I looked down at the screen, my heart sank to the floor. Rule 5. If the scanner displays your name, clock out and leave immediately. Do not finish your shift. I stood frozen, my hands shaking. The text on the screen flickered and disappeared, returning to the normal inventory interface. I swallowed, my throat dry. I scanned another item, a pack of sponges. And then it appeared again. Jack Turner inventory error. The scanner screamed, that familiar alarm blaring in my head. The screen flashed with a command once more. Leave immediately. I dropped the scanner as if it were electric. Its metal casing clattered on the floor, the echo stretching down the aisle. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew one thing. I had to get out. I spun around, ready to run for the exit, but I stopped dead. Ahead of me, at the end of the aisle, a shadow stood silently. It was a tall, twisted figure with a blurred outline. Its eyes were 2 points of red light, like burning embers staring right at me. It didn't move, but it chilled me to the bone, pinning me to the spot. I knew it was too late to follow the rules now. The scanner on the floor let out one last, piercing beep. The screen flickered and a single, cold, decisive word appeared. Run. I didn't hesitate. I bolted, sprinting toward the front of the store, my breath coming in ragged, suffocating gasps. Behind me, I heard footsteps, slow, heavy, with an inhuman rhythm. I weaved between the aisles, my heart threatening to beat out of my chest. Even though I'd left the scanner on the floor in aisle 12, its beeping still echoed in my ears like a death knell. The fluorescent lights began to flicker violently, as if the entire store were reacting to my terror. The shadows stretched and twisted under the strobing lights, pooling into black vortexes at the edges of shelves. Every step felt like I was wading through asphalt, an invisible force at my feet trying to drag me back into the darkness. I turned down a random aisle, almost slipping in a puddle of spilled laundry detergent. Then I stopped. The shelves around me were completely empty. The once full displays were gone, leaving only dust-covered metal racks, as if the life had been sucked out of the entire store. A subtle hum filled the air. The floor beneath me vibrated faintly. I saw the convex mirror at the end of the aisle. It was cracked, the surface warped and distorted, but it still reflected what was behind me. In the mirror, the figure had appeared again, tall, blurry, its eyes glowing red. But this time it was moving. It was no longer standing still. In the reflection, it was walking toward me, step by steady step. I spun around. Behind me, there was nothing. The aisle was silent, endless, and empty. Leave, a deep, raspy voice whispered in my ear, as if squeezed from the throat of something that wasn't supposed to speak. I ran for the front lobby, my mind screaming the rule over and over. Rule 5. If the scanner displays your name, clock out and leave immediately. Do not finish your shift. I slammed against the automatic doors, pounding on the glass, but they wouldn't budge. One by one, the checkout screens flickered to life, casting an eerie blue glow. Then the PA system hummed, and Gary's voice came through, terrifyingly calm. Jack, what are you doing? You haven't finished your work. I spun around. The lobby was empty. Gary? Where are you? What the hell is going on? No response. Only the low buzz of static from the speakers. The lights slowly dimmed, plunging the store into a strange twilight. Far away, the scanner I had dropped started beeping again, the sound growing sharper and more insistent, as if it were calling me back. I frantically searched for an exit, the back door, the fire escape, the emergency exits. All of them were locked, sealed, or simply useless. The entire store had become a conscious beast, sealing every escape route. Its walls seemed to pulse faintly, as if it were slowly breathing. The humming sound became a low-frequency vibration, the whole structure seeming to resonate with it. That's when I saw a door. It was tucked away in a corner of the stockroom, inconspicuous, a door I'd never seen on any floor plan. There was no sign on it, just a metal keypad embedded in the frame. The beeping of the scanner was almost deafening now, and I suddenly understood that the sound was coming from behind that door. I had no choice. I approached the door. The numbers on the keypad suddenly began to rearrange themselves, as if welcoming a long-awaited input. My hand moved on its own. I pressed one of the keys. The door hissed open, revealing a narrow spiral staircase that descended into the earth. I stood at the entrance, every nerve screaming at me to turn back. But the familiar footsteps sounded again, heavy, close, inescapable. I had to go down. The staircase felt endless. With every step, the temperature dropped and the air grew thin. When I finally reached the bottom, I was standing in a massive underground control room. The walls were covered in monitors, each one displaying a different corner of the store. The aisles, the break room, the stockroom, the parking lot. And in every single frame, there were figures in night shift uniforms, just like me, but their movements were stiff and synchronized like puppets on a string. In the center of the room, Gary stood with his back to me, staring at a colossal machine. It was covered in blinking panels and glowing circuits, pulsing with a deep blue light, like some kind of alien artifact. What is all this? I asked, my voice trembling. Gary turned slowly, a sickeningly calm expression on his face. This is the future of retail, Jack. What are you talking about? What did you do to us? He gestured toward the monitors. Walmart has always pursued ultimate efficiency, simplifying processes, reducing human error. This store is our testing ground for the perfect system. The scanner, the rules, they don't just manage inventory. They manage people. My stomach churned. You're controlling us. Brainwashing us. Not brainwashing, Gary smiled. Optimizing. The rules are a safety valve to keep the system in balance. When you deviate, it starts to break down, and that's when it becomes dangerous. The scanner beeped one last time. Gary held it up. The screen flashed a final message. Jack Turner. Terminate. I didn't have time to react. The red-eyed figure stepped out of the shadows. It moved without a sound, its limbs too long, its face barely human, more like some biomechanical construct. It moved toward me, the red light in its eyes piercing me like a laser. I screamed and turned to run, my cries echoing through the underground labyrinth before being swallowed by the empty space. The next morning, they found my car in the parking lot, keys still in the ignition. Inside the store, there was no trace of me. Only on the floor of aisle 12 lay a scanner, its screen still flickering. On it was one final rule: follow the rules or become part of the system.